Welcome to Giants of History. Today, we'll talk about our planet, this Earth that emerged and survived against all odds 252 million years ago. Earth was closer to death than ever before, without warning, without escape, only silence. As life began to fade, the oceans turned against each other, the air became poisonous, and all the worlds disappeared. This was Earth's worst day, the Great Dying.
There was a time when the Earth breathed differently. The oceans were warm and shallow, thick with life in every direction. Reefs stretched for thousands of kilometers beneath a sun that had never known a winter long enough to matter. Strange creatures drifted through those ancient seas, creatures with no names yet, no fossils yet, no record of anything except their brief, brilliant existence. On the continents, which were still fused into one enormous landmass we now call Pangaea, forests of towering ferns and ancient conifers spread across vast interior plains. Insects the size of birds patrolled the canopy. Synapsids, the distant ancestors of everything that would one day become a mammal, stalked the undergrowth on legs that had only recently learned to move efficiently beneath their bodies. The world was approximately 252 million years old, and it was thriving. But under the surface, quite literally, something had been building for hundreds of thousands of years, a pressure that the Earth could not hold forever. It did not begin with a single explosion. There was no single terrible moment that any creature living then could have pointed to and said, "This is when it started." It began as a trembling, a deep, slow violence under what is now Siberia, where the mantle of the Earth fractured along seams that had been under tension for millions of years. Lava began to pour through those cracks, not in hours or days, but across centuries, across millennia. Floods of molten rock that eventually covered an area the size of Western Europe, 3 kilometers deep. We call it the Siberian Traps. It is the largest volcanic event in the last 500 million years of Earth's history. And it released something far more dangerous than fire. It released carbon, sulfur, mercury, methane locked in ancient ice, greenhouse gases in quantities the atmosphere had never been asked to absorb. The ocean began to warm. Then the chemistry of the ocean began to change. The water grew acidic, slowly, then rapidly. The oxygen content of the deep sea began to fall. The creatures living in those ancient reefs had no mechanism for sensing what was happening to them. There was nothing to flee from, no predator to outrun. The water simply became, molecule by molecule, a place where they could no longer live. The reefs went first. For 60 million years, the reefs of the Permian had been among the most complex ecosystems the planet had ever produced. Forests of crinoids, towers of sponges, carpets of brachiopods spreading across the seafloor in every direction. Predators and prey bound together in webs of dependency so intricate that the loss of one thread could collapse entire sections. When the ocean warmed beyond the tolerance of the reef-building organisms, those threads began to snap. The foundation animals died. The creatures that fed on them lost their food source. The creatures that sheltered among the reef structures lost their refuge. The collapse was not instant. It was a slow unraveling that took thousands of years and left behind, at the end, almost nothing. On land, the story was different, but no less complete. The warming atmosphere disrupted the monsoon systems that fed the great interior forests. Droughts stretched across regions that had never been dry. The ferns died. The trees died. The herbivores that had eaten them wandered through a landscape turning gray and lifeless. their bodies consuming themselves as they searched for food that was no longer there. And when the herbivores fell, the predators followed. It is estimated that the Permian-Triassic extinction event, the Great Dying, as paleontologists call it, killed 96% of all marine species and 70% of all land vertebrates. It is the closest life on Earth has ever come to complete annihilation. It took 10 million years for biodiversity to return to anything resembling what had existed before. 10 million years. The entire history of human civilization, from the first chipped stone to now, fits into that gap more than 3,000 times. But something survived. It always does. In the deepest parts of the ocean, where the collapse of the surface food chains had not yet reached, organisms that had learned to live in cold, oxygen-poor water found themselves, strangely, at an advantage. In the soils and sediments of the land, bacteria and fungi that fed on dead matter thrived in a world suddenly full of it. Small, burrowing animals, creatures that could slow their metabolism, creatures that could eat almost anything, endured in pockets of survivable habitat scattered across a devastated world. Among them were the archosaurs, a lineage of reptiles that had been, before the extinction, relatively unremarkable. Medium-sized, efficient, adaptable. In the empty world that followed the Great Dying, they were perfectly positioned to fill the gaps left by everything that had died. Their descendants would become the crocodilians, the birds. And, for 165 million extraordinary years, the dinosaurs. The survivors did not know they were survivors. They were simply still alive, in a world that had grown quiet around them, searching for food in the gray landscape of the Triassic dawn. They did not choose to inherit the Earth. It fell to them by default, through the oldest process there is. They were still here when everything else was gone. The recovery was not triumphant. It was patient. For millions of years after the extinction, the Earth remained sparse. The fossil record of the early Triassic is sometimes called the dead zone, a stretch of geological time where the rocks hold almost nothing alive. No great reefs, no complex forests, no long food chains. Just simple opportunistic life, slowly, cautiously, testing what the new world would allow. Then, gradually, complexity returned. New reef systems formed, built by different organisms than those that had come before. New forests spread across continents, rearranged by millions of years of tectonic drift. New predators emerged, filling niches that had been empty since the die-off. The ocean, once a graveyard of acid and heat, became blue again. Not the same blue, a different blue, populated by different creatures, organized in different ways. The world that returned was not the world that had been lost. It never is. But it was alive, and alive with enough time leads anywhere. The message in the rock. We know all of this because of stone. The boundary between the Permian and the Triassic is visible in rock formations on every continent. A thin band of gray clay where the fossils simply stop. 1 centimeter of geological time containing more death than any other moment in Earth's history. Scientists call it the PTB layer. Paleontologists have spent decades reading it like a sentence that ends mid-word. And what the rock tells us is not comforting, but it is important. The Great Dying was caused by rapid carbon release, by a warming ocean, by acidification and oxygen depletion, by the disruption of systems that had taken hundreds of millions of years to build, by a change that happened, in geological terms, in an instant. We are not living in the Permian, The mechanisms are different. The timescales are different. The causes are different. But the language the scientists use when they study the Great Dying has a way of feeling familiar. The vocabulary of thresholds, of tipping points, of systems under stress, reaching the moment where they can no longer hold. The Earth has always recovered. That part is true. It recovered from the Great Dying. It recovered from the asteroid that ended the dinosaurs. It will recover from whatever comes next. But the Earth's recovery takes millions of years. And the species that caused the damage are not guaranteed to be part of the world that comes back. 252 million years ago, the world ended. Not the planet, the world. The living, breathing, interconnected world of the Permian, with its reefs and its forests and its creatures that had no idea they were about to become ghosts. And yet, here we are. Every living thing on Earth today is descended from something that survived that ending. Every tree, every fish, every insect, every bird. You are reading these words because your most ancient ancestors were small enough, adaptable enough, lucky enough to make it through a world that had stopped wanting them to exist. Extinction is not the end of life. It is the end of a particular arrangement of life. And in the wreckage of every ending, without fail, something begins to find its way towards a light. The rock remembers. And if we are paying attention, so can we. If this story moved you, if you believe the memory of this planet deserves to be told, follow it, Klesso. Every silence here has a voice. Every ending has a beginning, waiting inside it.
And so, another chapter of our planet's story comes to a close. Thank you for being here, for sitting with these ancient silences, for letting history speak through you. This is Giants of History, and until the next story finds us, take care of the world you inherited. See you soon.